Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Spurs Up Show. This is episode 30. We've got a very special show for you guys today. It's Clemson, Carolina week. We've got a very special guest to come on talk about it, kind of talk some Gamecock football, recap this season, as of course, look ahead to the weekend as well. But first, before we get into that, if you do want to follow the show, be sure to check us out on iTunes at the Spurs Up Show. Be sure to go there, rate, subscribe, tell us you like, tell us you don't like about the show. We obviously appreciate all the feedback as always. Be sure to follow us on our Twitter account as well. That's going to be at ArmchairSCar, at ArmchairSCAR. Check us out on Instagram as well, at ArmchairSCarolina. And this is a podcast brought to you by the Armchair Americans, ArmchairAmericans.com, localizing your sports coverage content. Be sure to go to ArmchairAmericans.com for all the latest breaking South Carolina Gamecocks news, the show, of course, and all of our coverage there. So, as always, again, I'm your host, Chris Phillips. Like I mentioned, I am joined by a very special guest today. He's a college football writer and analyst for 247 Sports and CBS Sports, does a lot of coverage for South Carolina Gamecocks football. You've probably seen him on Twitter, has a really big presence there. So, without further ado, the one, the only, Brad Crawford joins us today. Brad, appreciate you coming on again. Thank you so much for your time, and really appreciate you coming on the show.
The one and only, huh?
Something like that, yeah. Thought I'd build it up a little bit, right?
Saturday night, man. Gamecocks. Gamecocks have lost several games in a row in this series since winning, one for the thumb several years ago. So I'm looking forward to seeing, what South Carolina team shows up. Is it going to be the one that, laid an egg versus Kentucky, or against a team like Georgia? So the games, Clemson's a 2-1, I think it is right now. The Gamecocks can cover and maybe win outright.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to get into the game with you, a little bit more. First, I want to kind of get your feedback on just kind of this season. Obviously, it's year 2 of the Will Muschamp era, and South Carolina is 8-3, hit a mark that, I think a lot of people, especially outside of the Gamecock football program, didn't necessarily expect. I mean, first thing I think of is kind of the SEC network prediction that South Carolina go 4-8 this year. But anyways, kind of what's going on with the SEC as well. Jim McElwain at Florida's fired. You've got, looks like maybe Kevin Sumlin, Butch Jones, is already fired as well. Maybe Kevin Sumlin on his way out. You've got all the coaching rumors and the coaching carousel. I'm sure more firings to come. What in your opinion, because I think a lot of people have made, light of South Carolina's schedule maybe, and they've gone 8-3 in a weekend East. But, obviously I think it's key that for South Carolina to take advantage of that. What do you think that South Carolina needs to do as far as taking advantage of that and kind of establish themselves, maybe, leapfrogging those other programs and competing with the likes of Georgia in the SEC East?
I think right now Muschamp is a little bit ahead of schedule in Columbia. Vegas had the Gamecocks 5.5 over/under. That was my lock of the year. I knew this team back, especially on offense, and back defensively, they get to at least 6-6 this season, and really was one of the only guys to pick the Gamecocks to go 8-4. And it looks like, with the loss to Clemson, that's going to happen. So benefited from a schedule that, in July or August, maybe it looked difficult, but I think there's one win right now out of those 8 against a team with a winning record, not counting Wofford. Win looks good. It's looking worse by the week, however, with the Wolfpack failing late. But I thought the Gamecocks, have played about the way I expect them to. A bit worse on defense, maybe a little bit better on offense. The line this year for me is Roper going to keep his job at the end of the season. I think he will. The biggest issue to me has been execution, and it Bentley to the offensive line to running backs being kind of spotty, dropping passes. Since South Carolina lost Debo Samuel, there really hasn't been an emerging star on that side of the ball, but still managed to win 8 games. So with the personnel Roper has, doing okay.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. I know that, I've definitely, followed you along with Twitter, this season, and I've given my fair share of criticism to Kurt Roper, especially at times with the lack of, creativity, if you will. That was something I wanted to talk to you about, because I kind of had the feeling during this season that that, Will Muschamp was going to have to eventually kind of sit down and make a decision. Is he going to allow Kurt Roper to stay on his staff, or, how is he going to basically develop on offense? Because he knows, we all know that was his Achilles heel at Florida. Kurt Roper joined that coaching staff, if you will, very late. Do you think that it's more so, you talked about the missed opportunities. Do you think it's missed opportunities? Do you think there's some lack of offensive creativity there, or maybe a little bit of both, or maybe it really just is the injuries and kind of just what they have to work with?
It falls on Muschamp too. Don't want to hear that, but especially third and fourth and short situations. Coach this season, the way he's coached his entire career, he wants to do everything he can to make sure games are close in the fourth quarter. Never been a good enough team to kind of have the, step on the throat mentality. But I think during the Spurrier era, got used to, once they get a takeaway, let's go up top to a wide receiver down the middle of the field. Jake Bentley's been good between the numbers this season, has not been good outside the numbers. That's kind of hurt the Gamecock offense. A lot of folks bringing up sophomore slump, and it's just Jake maybe pressing a little too much. His throws or high passes that they really haven't hit their mark. The third down situations, to me, has been the offense's biggest issue.
Right, and that's one thing I actually wanted to ask you about as well, because I've gotten this question a lot actually about the offenses. Do you think, and I'll ask your opinion, do you think that Kurt Roper, maybe Will Muschamp, have asked a little bit too much of Jake Bentley this year, or do you think it's just purely just him pressing and trying to maybe make too many plays?
I don't think they've asked him to make throws that he can't make. Last season, he was, the SEC's most accurate passer down the field yards, and this season, he route. He's having trouble with the post. Probably Jake's best throw this season, one that's always on the money, is that 7 to 10 yard slant route that Debo was so good at. That's a play that they've kind of utilized with Shi Smith some. Brian Edwards has dropped his share of those passes, but he's also made plays as well. So Gamecock's receiving core, everybody's coming back next year. It's a very young group, very talented group. But I don't think all the blame goes on Roper though. If Jake hits some of those wheel routes for touchdowns, notably one against Missouri, had one against Arkansas he missed badly on. Hit some of those throws, maybe he has 20 touchdown passes right now. I do think that Roper has been a little more stubborn in targeting Hayden Hurst in the Gamecock offense, because even when he doesn't catch passes, he's good at getting defensive backs to interfere with him.
Yeah, and I know he's definitely a guy that you talk about a lot, that the South Carolina offense, needs a target. I mean, for good reason. He's, I think has the potential to be one of the best, maybe if not the best, tight end in the SEC. And that seems to be a common theme as well. I know, over at Georgia, they've obviously got a freshman quarterback, but a guy, Isaac Nada, they haven't really used him a whole lot either. So it's been kind of a weird year for tight ends. You talked about, obviously, had one of his better games of the season against Wofford. Granted, it was Wofford, but I thought he was, if not for some drops in that game, could have almost really completed 100% of his passes. Moving over to the defensive side, a guy that you've talked about a lot this season, and for good reasons, Rashad Fenton. For fans that don't really, study him every snap, don't really look at that film like that. How good has he really been?
Right. This season, Rashad was arguably Gamecock's best player, who could maybe find himself, late second round, early third round type guy. Now he's someone the last 3 weeks. I think Vanderbilt, Derek Mason, saw something on film that Fenton's not situations. He's better kind of playing, 5 to 7 yards off the ball. Like I said, first half he was probably the Gamecocks' best cover guy, but in 11 games in now, I think Chris Lamont has probably been consistent defensive back, playing that safety role. Jamarcus King, I know he's criticized a lot by Gamecock fans, rightfully so, but last 3 games he's probably made the biggest improvement, I think, on Will Muschamp's defense as a whole. Fenton hadn't allowed a touchdown in games, 19 starts I think it was, and then last 4 weeks really been targeted a lot, like I mentioned, but as a whole has performed. I thought they would. I mean, Will Muschamp really can't complain with the effort those guys have given this season. A linebacker play, I think, without Bryson Allen Williams has Jay Brunson. Regardless of the stops, man, if you look at the analytics, he's really struggled this season, especially in pass coverage. So that's an area that I expect Brunson, who was Muschamp's first recruit, to really improve in.
Yeah, and that's one thing we've actually talked about on our show a lot is it seems like, obviously the loss of Debo has been magnified by everyone that talks about this Gamecock team, but that loss of Bryson Allen Williams is one that, you really can't take for granted either. I mean, that's, one of your, leaders on your defense. Thankfully, he is coming back next year along with Debo as far as we know right now. But yeah, I think he's definitely a guy, a playmaker they could have used in, definitely a couple ball games this year that he was out. Talking about a couple more defensive guys, young players like Jamias Williams, Aaron Sterling, Brad Johnson. They've all kind of had their share of an impact this season, some more than others. How good of players do you think guys like that can be? Because I think a guy like Jamias Williams has got an extremely bright future in Will Muschamp's system.
I think he has a very good upside. Gamecock fan, I would have liked to maybe seen Jam get a few snaps on the offensive side of the ball this season, maybe special teams game too. He's been a guy, because of his size, slot, but there's not many true freshmen who've been asked to do as much. I think he's played, last I saw, 585 snaps, which is about fourth most on that defense. True freshman. I don't care how talented you are. That's a lot to ask. He's really struggled kind of in that slot position, but very, very good in run support. He had a tackle for loss that was a very good play on an option pitch. The previous week with that pick. So can Jam play better? I think he can, and I think he will next season. But this year, I think there's certainly room to grow, and he probably gets a passing grade.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So got to ask, just have to touch on it.
Beard.
The obvious. Well, not the beard. I was going to say the one thing I was trying to avoid is the kicking game.
Gosh,
without stating,
I almost got banned from Twitter for celebrating.
Yeah, I was going to say without stating the obvious of how much they've struggled. I mean, what do you make of South Carolina's kicking game in 2017? I mean, kind of looking ahead, what did they have to do? I mean, do you think that Parker White
on the kicking game, 11 for 21 now, 9 for 11 inside of 40 yards. Normally, I would say kickers do not win college football games because of the points, but without Parker White, the Gamecocks would have lost to Louisiana Tech. Let's be honest. They decided versus Clemson too that when they get in the red zone, if they can't produce touchdowns, they're going to have to count the kicking game to produce points. So, game's an area where elite teams have struggled this season, and teams and a team with 8 wins like South Carolina. So, it's his first year being a kicker. Muschamp has really put him in a kind of strange situation. He's not confident kicking 48 and 49 yarders, and Muschamp's still trying to do this. So, I'm gonna boil it down to more just a short yardage play calls on 4th and 3 inside the opponent's 40. I'd rather see Gamecocks go for it than try for 3 points.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was going to say 4th and 5 or less, I think, is when you really got to, you got to at least, think about it for sure, especially with the struggles that Parker White's had. I mean,
good defense. So.
Right, exactly. And, another team that's had their struggles as far as in the kicking game, surprisingly enough, the team the South Carolina Gamecocks will play this weekend, the Clemson Tigers. It's, Brad, it's rivalry week. Everybody in the state of South Carolina knows what this week means to both sides. Going in this game, I kind of feel like the rivalry has a little bit more flair than it has, maybe the most since maybe 2013 or 2014. What are your thoughts kind of around the I guess the atmosphere of this game or kind of the feeling from both sides? Because I kind of feel like last year you sort of went in this game knowing what was going to happen. But it feels like this year there's kind of a little bit more flair for the dramatics. There's kind of a little bit more chippiness on both sides.
Last year, the spread for that game was and
I did too.
I don't know what happened at Memorial Stadium, but it was ugly. Jake Bentley, he said in May that he vowed that this would never happen again. Well, this is his chance. Start at night, Williams Bryce, not planning a blackout. This is a team that I think is beatable. I've watched Clemson play all year. I actually had Clemson 9-3. I did not think they'd make the playoff. They're going to get there. If the Gamecocks don't beat them, I think Miami will. But just don't look elite to me outside of that front seven on defense. That's a guy who can have a great game or he can have a bad game. He's very kind of north-south, a lot like Jake is. It's a game that if it's a 7-point game going to the fourth quarter, does Bryce Faithful kind of have some magic in store for that game? But at the outset, spread is probably a non-playable game for me because I do think it'll be a decent game late in the second half.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I definitely think it's a winnable game for South Carolina. Obviously, there's been a lot of trash talk, a lot of banter from both sides. I've seen a lot of score predictions from 2, 3, 4 touchdown game. Obviously, it's just a lot of trash talk on both sides. But you talked about and I agree with you. I Clemson making the playoff this season. I just thought when you lose guys like Mike Williams, Deshaun Watson, I mean, even with the great defensive front and the defense they have in general, it's a lot to overcome. I mean, ask South Carolina what happened when they lost Connor Shaw and moved to Dylan Thompson. As good as a player he was, but lost so many key pieces. Either way, though, Clemson is in the top 4 right now. They have the one lone loss to Syracuse, and as you said, they open as a 14-point underdog. Bottom line, Brad, what's South Carolina got to do? Obviously, they're going to have the night game again, the raucous crowd. But what does South Carolina have to do on the field, to spring the upset?
Yeah, I think some of the obvious things are obviously winning the turnover battle. During that 5-game winning streak from I think it was 09 to 14 or 13. Gamecocks were, I want to say, +9 turnovers. And then the last 3 seasons, they've been -2. Gamecocks right now are +9 in the SEC, Alabama. So they've done a great job of plays, but when they've given the ball up, either just 6 points after the Gamecocks turned it over this year. So that's going to take chances downfield. I think the Gamecocks secondary has to play well for us. Gamecocks have had games this year where they've been very good. Like at Tennessee, at Missouri, where they've gotten pressure on quarterbacks. It's time back there. I think he is good enough to pick the secondary apart. It's like DJ Warner, Dante Sawyer. Best effort in this game. Obviously, run's very important. I don't think Gamecocks are going to be able to do that. He has to play a very good game, turnover-free game, and not try to make plays like just that one-handed catch from Hayden Hurst play on Twitter, but that was just a bonehead play that Jake normally doesn't make. And those kind of plays against Clemson might turn into 6 the other way. So really just play smart with the football. Try to have sustained drives, 3 and outs, giving the ball back to that high-powered offense for the Tigers. Just avoid mistakes and try to make the most of every possession.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially about the turnovers. Like you said, when the South Carolina was on that 5-game winning streak, I mean, it just seemed like they were able to force turnovers that turned to points. I think back to the Antonio Allen pick 6, and I think that was 2010, I want to say. The turnovers in the 2013 game, like you said, just kind of really added up. And I think the other thing for me would be, like you said, line of scrimmage as far as on both sides. I think DJ Wanham, Dante Sawyer, Javon Kinlaw, even some guys like that are going to have to get in Kelly Bryant's face. And then on the other side, how do guys like Alan Knott, Corey Helms, Zach Bailey stack up against that that extremely talented Clemson front seven. I think also the red zone is going to be a huge area. Which team score touchdowns and not settle for field goals? We obviously know that's been, a huge Achilles heel for South Carolina this year. And like I mentioned, kind of earlier, Clemson's had their woes with kicking as well. I think their kicker 1 for 9, I think over 40 yards or so. I think actually he might not have a make over 40 yards. Either way, they've had their struggles as well in the kicking game. They just haven't been magnified just because I don't think most of their games really haven't been close.
Right. I mean,
let me ask you, Brad, what's the
versions would certainly help too, like Dylan's run at Memorial Stadium. I mean,
right.
those are back-breaking plays.
Yeah, and those are kind of plays that kind of, almost define a rivalry. I know. I mean, yeah, for sure. Who's the one player you think, Brad, that maybe we aren't focused on, maybe fans aren't focused on, leading up to this game that needs to have a big game for South Carolina to win?
I think if A.J. Turner Gamecocks will probably win. I don't expect him to get 100 yards, but stats, and he's one of the SEC's best running backs as far as a pass catcher is concerned. One of the reasons, we haven't seen Tyson Williams the last couple of weeks, except for that, spot duty against Wofford, is because in pass pro, he had a missed block that got Jake killed. All kind of miscommunications, blocking back there. Very talented back, but, there's a reason why A.J. Turner is not only getting most of the rushing snaps, but passing snaps too. So maybe catches 5 balls for 60 yards and maybe has rushing. I think that could produce a win for the Gamecocks.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, A.J. Turner's been an absolute spark this year, and I agree with Tyson Williams' point that, the pass blocking has definitely been, a huge reason for him not being in the game. But, yeah, I think South Carolina – I mean, it's kind of stating the obvious, but their recipe, stop the run and run the football, is going to be, prove true for South Carolina. I feel like every time they've seemed to do that, they have a very good chance to win. So with that being said, Brad, I'm going to put you on the spot. Make a prediction for the game Saturday. Who wins and why?
I'm going 31-24 Clemson. Cover. I think South Carolina will have the ball midway through the fourth quarter with a chance to either tie the game or take the lead, and have seen a lot of close losses to Clemson at Williams-Brice Stadium Saturday night. But the atmosphere, I'm looking forward to it. As an unbiased observer, I'm ready to see a very good ball game between for the Palmetto State.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to save my prediction. Actually, we have another show to do this week, so I'm going to make everybody wait for that, but I promise it'll be worth the wait. And then last thing, we're finishing up, talking about, I saw on Sunday your bowl projections came out, kind of predicting every single team's, bowl destination. You had South Carolina playing Michigan in the Tax Slayer Bowl. That's definitely one I've heard about. Are there any other possible destinations you're hearing for South Carolina? Obviously, anywhere in Florida, I think Gamecock fans would take. But what's sounding like the most likely situation where the Gamecocks will be playing this December?
Yeah, there's a chance that if the Gamecocks beat Clemson and look good doing it, bowls like the Outback in Tampa and a Citrus Bowl in Orlando kind of come into play. I think if Auburn doesn't make the New Year's Six, obviously they'd be the best team to kind of get that Orlando bid. But a close loss to Clemson probably locks up in Jacksonville versus a very good Northwestern team. Belk Bowl in Charlotte, I wouldn't count it out, but played there this season. I don't know if fans want to go back. So Music City and then maybe an outside shot at the Outback are my kind of 3 games I'm looking at.
Yeah, and I definitely think those are all 3 destinations that obviously, before the season and especially now, South Carolina fans would definitely take somewhere warm for sure. So, Brad, again, we appreciate you coming on, taking out some time out of your day. Why don't you let the people know exactly where they can find your work and also, on Twitter as well?
Man, I do a bunch of Gamecock columns on the Big Spur. Follow me on Twitter at bcrawford247. I talk sneakers, beards, and football. So
Yeah, I saw the sneakers that you were. Did you end up getting those or?
Those were that was a whimsical dream for me that didn't come true.
Gotcha,
So
gotcha. Yeah, those were fresh. I like those. I saw the somebody was able to scoop up the $50,000 pair that MJ actually wore in a game. I was like, man, I'd
that's unreal.
like that to get those. But again, Brad, appreciate you coming on again for the Spurs Up Show. If you want to follow the show, be sure to check us out again on iTunes at the Spurs Up Show. Go there, rate and subscribe. Again, follow us on our Twitter account. Car. You can find us on Instagram at Armchair S Carolina. And again, go to armchairallamericans.com. Be sure to check out all the latest breaking Gamecock news, all of your coverage there, and of course the podcast. So again, Brad, we appreciate your time, appreciate you coming on the show. Again, be sure to go follow Brad, all of his work at thebigspur.com. B Crawford 247 again is his Twitter name. And again, the Gamecocks taking on the Clemson Tigers this Saturday at Williams-Brice Stadium. Be a 7:30 kickoff. If you can't be there, be sure to tune in on ESPN. Again, for Brad Crawford, I'm Chris Phillips. We appreciate you guys listening, and we'll catch you next time.